First of all, let me clarify that I don't agree with the idea to call the genocide in the former Yugoslavia genocide in Srebrenica, because Srebrenica was just a case, just a place, a moment in the whole genocide. And it is somehow bizarre, even if some courts did it. From a historical or sociological point of view, or even from a legal point of view, it is somehow bizarre to think that the genocide happened only in one place. Genocide is a project applied to a whole society. I'm convinced that the case there is the case of the former Yugoslavia, because the project was to destroy the Yugoslavian identity, and it was somehow a successful project, because you can see there are no more Yugoslavs. You have now Croats or Serbs or Bosnians, but no more Yugoslavs, which was the main objective of the perpetrators, to transform and reorganize society through terror. So that's the main objective of genocide, of modern genocide in history. It is to use the terror, to use the concentration camp system, to use the annihilation, to transform and reorganize social relationships. First, the case in Nazi Germany was a project of reorganization of the German society first during the 30s and the European society with the beginning of the war, and using terror as a as a tool to transform and reorganize society. In the case of Argentina, it was part of a continental project, so it was also a case to transform the Argentinian society, but in the frame of a wider transformation of the whole Latin American society through the national security doctrine. And in the case of the former Yugoslavia, I think there are some differences. It is also a project to transform society, but not only to transform, but to totally destroy an identity and replace with a new model of identity. And that's why I think to confront the objectives of the genocideurs, it is quite important to understand that genocide as a genocide in former Yugoslavia, as a project to destroy the Yugoslavian identity, fueling the nationalisms and destroying this kind of identity and creating new identities, these new nationalist identities in this territory. I guess that the main element of continuity is the use of terror to transform society. In the case of Nazism, it was not enough clear in the beginning. I used to say that Nazism was a laboratory of the application of terror. During the process, the Nazis were realizing how effective terror is to transform the whole society. So particularly the first moment in Nazism, the moment from 1933 to 1938, it was a moment in which the whole territory of Germany was full of concentration camps in which a lot of members of the society were interned, not necessarily killed. They were interned in concentration camps, they were tortured, they were submitted to terror, and that terror was quite effective to guarantee the obedience and discipline to Nazism, to spread the lack of trust in the whole society, and to inspire the possibilities of betrayal. So that was a kind of laboratory. At the same time, during the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, terror was developed also in the Eastern Bloc, particularly during Stalinism, as a very effective tool to transform social behavior. So I guess that's the main continuity between the processes in the 30s, 40s, and then in the 50s and 60s. And this process continued using new tools in the 90s, for example, the appearance in the case of the former Yugoslavia of systematic rape as a new tool to transform society and to spread the terror. The case in the former Yugoslavia is somehow the 21st century use of terror. At the end of the 20th century, the model was not only to destroy the minorities in plural society, but to split to break the states, to split the different groups, to avoid the possibility of continuity of plural states, because particularly when the states have the possibility to put some limits to transnational capitals, transnational companies, it's much more effective to break the state and to have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 little states with no possibility at all to put any kind of limit to the globalization, to the circulation of goods. Any genocide has to be prepared. So you need a moment of ideological preparation of the genocide to create this new model of identity, to put in question the plurality, to create a negative otherness in society. So it is possible to find this process in any genocide, and even in the case of the former Yugoslavia too, particularly after Tito's death, this fueling of different nationalism, mainly the Serbian nationalism, but not only, also the fueling of other nationalism and the transformation of the elements of identity, trying to go to the 14th century and to the myths of the confrontation between the Muslims and Christians. That's a process that it's needed in any genocide, to create a new mentality and to create the possibility to understand the other as alien, as dangerous, as not a part of us. Then you have the process of the genocide, the material implementation of the genocide, the persecution, the torture, the annihilation. In this modern genocide, that's not enough. So the terror is very effective, but the process in which the terror affects our identity, it is a process that happened after the genocide. That's what I used to call the symbolical enactment of genocide, or even the post-genocidal societies. Post-genocide society is the moment in which the society is trying to create a narrative of the past. It could be done in different ways. Usually the objective of the genociders is to have a post-genocidal society that ratifies and legitimizes the model of identity created through the terror. It is logic that it will happen, but it is not automatic. It is not absolute. So the societies can confront this model, and this is part of a post-genocidal society. This creation of the ways of represent and narrate the past, and that it is something that the perpetrators of genocide can't manage. The perpetrators of genocide, they can kill, they can persecute, they can torture, they can rape, but the ways in which we will represent the past, it is something that the society will do. But the main challenge in post-genocidal society is to confront with these objectives of the perpetrators, to confront the goal of the genocide, and trying to create other representations, other ways to narrate the past, other ways to understand the terror and the objectives of the terror, and other ways to understand our own identity. It is not a question of truth and lie. It is not a question of just only remember. But the main challenge is how to remember. How do we explain the past? Because even if we remember the past condemning the genocide, if we are ratifying this model of identity of the genociders, we are somehow legitimizing their objectives. This kind of process of remembrance only can think about what the perpetrators did with the bodies of the victims. So that's a real danger, because in that process of memorialization, you used to forget who the victims were. So I think it is very important in any post-genocidal society trying to recover who the victims were, not only what the perpetrators did to the victims, but mainly who the victims were. How did they used to live? What were the ways of their culture? What did they do? So trying to recover this identity that was that was subjected to killing and persecution, not only the bodies, but trying to recover the identity. I think that's a fundamental step, trying to confront the objectives of the perpetrators, not to make an abstract representation of the horror, just the killings, just the mass graves, just the torture, just the rape, but trying to go beyond the horror and trying to recover the identity of the victims, who they were. And that's fundamental to understand and to reopen the possibility to think about who we are.